I found that nothing in life is worthwhile unless you take risks. Nothing. Nelson Mandela said, "There is no passion to be found playing small and settling for a life that's less than the one you're capable of living." Now, I'm sure in your experiences in school and applying to college and picking your major and deciding what you want to do with life, I'm sure people have told you to make sure you have something to fall back on. Make sure you got something to fall back on, honey. But I never understood that concept, having something to fall back on. If I'm going to fall, I don't want to fall back on anything except my faith. I want to fall forward. I figure at least this way I'll see what I'm going to hit. Fall forward. This is what I mean. Reggie Jackson struck out 2,600 times in his career, the most in the history of baseball. But you don't hear about the strikeouts. People remember the home runs. Fall forward. Thomas Edison conducted 1,000 failed experiments. Did you know that? I didn't know that. Because the 1,001st was the light bulb. Fall forward. Every failed experiment is one step closer to success.
I read this book because I was in disbelief, because people would tell, here's the strategy for success of The Secret, right? Go into your house and into a quiet room, and you close the lights, draw the shades, and sit on a couch and visualize a big fat check. 25 G's, $1,000 US, okay, with your name on it. And I want you to imagine that check and just make that check go bigger in your mind and make it real, more real, and just put it out into the ether of the universe, and the law of attraction will take hold. Just think about it. Bullshit, right? Hello? If that's your strategy for success, the only thing that will show up in your mailbox is not the check, it's a freaking eviction notice from your landlord. They'll be towing away your car. Your wife, your husband will be over the next door neighbor, and you'll be still saying, "Where's the check? Where's the check? Where's the..." Okay? The Secret is a load of crap, okay? Do I believe in manifestation? Yeah! Damn straight I do. But you gotta take action. I'm one of those unfortunate people. I tried it. I really did. I swear I tried it. I read the book, so let me try, you know? So I sat there and I prayed for the check. Never came. But when I went out and started taking action, guess what? The check came with an extra couple of zeros.
Those of you that have learned the 5-second rule, you've tried the countdown 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it's not working. I gotta level with you. The 5-second rule always works. It's backed by science, and it has helped change the lives of millions of people. The problem is not the rule. The problem is you actually don't want to change. I'm dead serious. I want you to just stop and think about that for a minute. For people who try to count down but then don't actually push themselves forward, for those of you that are struggling with self-doubt, struggling to get up on time, struggling to make the calls to grow your business, struggling to stay motivated, you know about the 5-second rule, but you don't use it, there's a simple reason why you're not using it. You don't want to change. Look, change is hard. I get it. If you're going to change anything about your life, you're going to have to face the unknown. You're going to have to step out of your comfort zone. You're going to have to try something new. You're going to have to risk rejection and judgment. It's scary. I get it. That's why most people never change. So if you're like Leanne and you've got all the tools at your disposal, but you still are stuck, the reason why you're stuck is you don't want to change yet. So stop complaining about the tools and go inward and actually examine, what are you afraid of? Seriously, what do you get out of staying stuck? What do you get from staying heavy? What do you get from not making the money that you want? What do you get from dating a string of losers? You get safety? I don't know, you get the ability to complain? Are you the one that's constantly dominating all your friendships because you're constantly griping about how bad your life is? I don't know what you're getting out of it, but you're getting something. The moment you decide that you're sick and tired of it, the moment that you decide that you are so ready to change, the 5-second rule, this puppy right here, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it'll be there and it'll work. And look, when you start deciding that it's time to change, you may have to use 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 5,000 times a day for weeks on end, because you're pushing through self-doubt, and you're pushing through procrastination, and you're pushing through resignation, and you're pushing through fear over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And then what's going to happen, and I see this happening around the world. I know that it works. We have proof that it works. If you use 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you push through everything that's stopping you right now, because this is your year, this is the moment that you're going to change. At some point, something's going to click, and the momentum's going to kick in, and suddenly, change isn't going to be scary. Change is going to be what's happening.
What do you think the minimum amount of money you want to make for your life? Like, what would be the minimum amount of money that you make every year that allowed you to live and do that content media site? What do you think?
Maybe 14,000, 50,000 pounds, maybe.
Great. So you're like, what is amazing about that, if that's where you're at, well then at this young of an age, and that's where you're at, and the fact that you're even here and you know, it's just unbelievable amounts of content in written, audio, and visual form on Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and podcast. And I will tell you, I would be flabbergasted in 3, 4, 5, 6 years, unless you suck, which you may. But if you don't suck, and you have that little of a financial need, right, which is remarkable, which is the biggest thing. Somebody here, I don't know if they're here, said, you made me realize I didn't need Rolexes and things of that nature, right? Like, the biggest reason so many of you will fail is your number for success is far greater than his. You think you need 1 million, which will then mean that you're gonna do a lot of things when you don't get 1 million very quickly that won't ever get you 1 million. So if you think what I just said is cool, which is bleed for 6 years in a row, you'll probably get sponsorship or sales of product to 40,000 a year. To me, that's what I did. I knew what I wanted. I was willing to give up my 20s for it. Gave them up. Gave them up. You know, somebody said it's difficult not to document right now. I'm like, but I didn't, right? They're like, what? Should I build my business or should I document? I'm like, both. He's like, well, I got to pick one. I'm like, build your business. Like, so if your ambitions are that humble, which they are, that's incredible. That excites me. Because by the way, here's the funny part. That's who I was too. I just needed 100,000 a year. Just, that seemed rich to me, right? Like, I was like, cool, I'll be okay. Like I'll have a house, like, you know, it's not, you know, I just needed to play, I needed the game. And too many of you in here want the stuff, not the game. When you fall in love with the game, everything's different because you've already won. That's real. It sounds cliche, but it's real.
I believe we all are raised as fighter jets. Just we get neutered by parents, by grandparents because of the filters they had and viewed life through, the experiences they had. Teachers who go, you don't want to disappoint yourself. Just go to college, go get a good job. Go to college. Don't go to college. Today, don't go to college. It's the worst thing you can do unless you're going to be a doctor or an attorney or an accountant or you know, some kind of an architect. Don't go to college. You can do a lot more in life without going to college. And so again, teachers, professors will end up neutering us. And when they take that fighter jet, that hunger, the claws and fangs, they defang us. All right, so now we're crop dusters. Well, I don't want to take too many risks. I just want to live a good life, and they want to be average and mediocre. That's the crop duster. Yet everyone inside has this hunger. See, the fighter jet didn't go away. It's just been suppressed. You've been neutered. And that was me. Like, hey, don't take big risks. Just go get a good job. Go be a smog technician. Like, that was the advice I was given. Go be a smog technician, right? So I'd be the guy putting the probe in the tailpipe of your car and then saying, you can go get your car registered, Tom. That was it. That was it. And so I realized very quickly that I've got this hunger inside me. And as I talk to others, they got this hunger inside them. Oh, that's the fighter jet trying to get out. That's the claws and fangs trying to grow. But the society, parents, whoever, have set the standard for you to not play it safe, take risks. What if you lose? What if you lose? Who cares? As long as you don't die, you can come right back. And so the fighter jet mentality is that someone who is just determined, relentlessly obsessed in achieving an outcome in the face of all adversity. The crop duster is someone who's always looking for the easiest path, the loophole, I used to be a severe crop duster. The crop duster hits the snooze button every day because they'd rather take 10 more minutes of mediocre sleep than getting up and dominating their path. Every morning on my nightstand, there's 2 stacks of dominoes lined up. And at the top of this stack says, you're a loser. The top of this one says you're a winner. If I hit the snooze button, I've hit that first domino in the loser stack. The rest of my day is gonna suck. Now with that mentality, am I gonna ever hit snooze again? Absolutely not. Because I've sold myself on the idea that when I hit the snooze button, I'm an absolute loser. I'm scum of the earth. My day is destined to be shit. Now some people go, you're being awfully hard on yourself. More people should be hard on themselves. We go around bubble wrapping ourselves, right? We leave the training wheels on for too long. Like, be hard on yourself. Take the bubble wrap off. Take the training wheels off. No one did that for me, man. And we came to this country and it was just like, hey, go figure it out. But it was don't take risks, to go get a good job. That. Be a fighter jet. Be a fighter jet. Go to battle every day. Take risks. That's what a fighter jet does. A crop duster has a routine life and it's boring.
If you ask me to coach your business, I'm not going to think about how to hold on to what you did last year. That's what most people right now are thinking here in March. In January, you're like, this is going to be a great year. By March, you're like, man, I just want to do what we did last year. If we just do, you're starting to make sense. You're becoming reasonable. Okay, I'm telling you that because this is what your people do too. Okay, your people, the people that you hire, they make sense of how to make 48 grand a year. And if you have people in your company that are trying to make sense of how to make 48 grand a year, you got a company that's going to die. Toys R Us filed bankruptcy this week. iHeartRadio, the biggest radio station in the world, filed for bankruptcy this week. There's going to be massive disruption in the marketplace. Why? Because these companies thought about, they kept having trophies about what they had rather than what they could get. Who's got money? Who's qualified to buy? How can I get their attention? How can I tell them what I want from them? Okay? How fast can I get to the marketplace? Fast, speed is the new big.
One of the big challenges for having a unique idea and then taking it through to fruition is always hard, right? It's never easy. There's always people who are going to question you. And being able to take that first step and fight through all the naysayers, you know, it's a process, but once you start to get traction, whether it's Uber, Lyft, whoever it may be, you know, and you're taking steps that nobody else has, that's when you really have to fight. And, you know, now, particularly where we don't have an administration that's particularly tech literate, I think there's going to be new challenges. And so the companies that are emerging today, maybe some of them are here at South by Southwest, you know, maybe it's going to be a little bit more difficult, but still there's no less need and it's no less important. You know, it's as the world changes, and I think it's going to change more over the next 10 years technologically than it has the past 30. We're going to need people to disrupt and make the world better.
I know that everybody's problem comes down to one pattern you're repeating that you can't see. And that pattern is getting triggered by something that happened in your past that left you with this emotional scar. And so for me, the thing that I always, always, always have to deal with in myself is the fear of disappointing somebody. So if I'm in a situation where I start to feel that, it's an old trigger. And so when you finally have a word that describes in a visceral way this thing you hate about yourself or this thing that triggers you or whatever it may be, that's where the power comes, because now you can name the thing that was once controlling you. And so if you can identify, first of all, the pattern you keep repeating that makes you miserable or doesn't serve you or makes you lose your power or has you go numb, then you can start to go back and say, well, where did I first start doing this? And what was the experience that triggered it? Because that's the root of the problem right there. And when you expose all of that, the trigger and the emotional button, like I'm afraid of disappointing people, I'm afraid of disappointing people, I'm not worthy, you know, I'm pissed off that this is happening to me. Now you have the ability to change it forever.
Discipline I had to get into was I always pay myself first, even when I had no money. And when I have all these bill collectors calling me, I use them as inspiration. You know what I mean? Really? Oh, when they're hounding, the government's hounding you, bill collectors calling, because I've been broke, so you understand what it feels like to be broke. When those guys are calling you, instead of shrinking and going into the shell and eating my pizza, I use it as motivation to go out and make more money. So I use my bill collectors as motivation, and that's why I paid myself first, even though sometimes I wasn't paying. What would you pay yourself? I always bought assets. I'd buy a house or I'd put money in the bank and things like this, but it was just a habit. Exactly what you're talking about. It's up here.
It's about changing the way you think. That's what the whole book is about.
That's it, because we're our biggest asset, we're also our biggest liability.
Passion is not an actionable word. It's correct, that those who do the things that they're passionate about do better, but it's not helpful advice. And so the question is, where does passion come from? Passion is a result. Passion is an energy. Passion is the feeling you have when you're engaged in something that you love. Passion is the feeling you have that you would probably do this for free, and you can't believe somebody pays you to do it, And I think we mistake that passion is something we do in our private lives, but it shouldn't be done, in our careers, for example. And I'm a firm believer that you are who you are. And anybody who says, I'm different at home than I am at work, in one of those two places, you're lying. And the goal is to make everything you do in home and at work something that you have excitement to do. So how do you find the things that you're excited to do? Well, it's actually easier than you think. What are the things that you love to do? What are the things that you would do for free? How can you recreate that feeling and be paid for it? So what are the things that I do on the weekend, right? I love, I'm very involved in the art world. I love to go to museums and galleries, but I love to go see dance and performances because I want to see how others are interpreting the world. So that inspires me. New ideas, new thoughts, new ways of looking at the world are things that interest me privately, and I seek it out and pay money for it, right? So does that mean I have to have a career in the arts? No, it means I have to have a career where new ideas are explored, where people are experimenting and trying things out, and I have to explore new ideas and try things out, and I'm just as excited to go to work every day as I am to, go do something on a Saturday night. And so the idea of finding your passion is ironically simple because you should be doing stuff that you enjoy sometimes. What is the stuff that you enjoy, and then what is the stuff that you love? Who are the people that you love, and what do they all have in common?
You got to get some haters. You need haters. No school is going to teach you how to get a hater. Okay? High school, elementary school, colleges, what do they teach? You want to be the most popular person. No, you want haters. Okay? The companies that are hated are the companies that are exploding. The people that are hated are the people that explode. If I don't hate you, if nobody hates you, nobody knows you. So the reason I'll tweet, for instance, when we started, we had this that newsletter that I sent out, okay? We send it out every week. We were hitting people once a month, and we started getting complaints. You send stuff out too much. My office came to me. We went to twice a month. They came to me. We have more people pulling off of the newsletter. Good. Double up again. Why? I want haters. Okay? So we started sending out one every week, and then I started a Twitter account. I actually had people write, Grant Cardone, social media people, Grant Cardone is an example of what not to do with social media. I said, freaking, just multiply. Just increase it, okay? We were doing like 4 tweets a day. Good, do 2 an hour. Why? Because I want my competition hating my guts. I want them talking about me. I mean, I don't really want people to hate me. You understand what I'm saying about? I want them so energized that they actually start pushing me. They start promoting me.
I was just having a debate with a friend of mine, and we got stuck on the difference between fault and responsibility. She kept talking about how something was somebody's fault. It's somebody's fault. And I was like, it don't matter whose fault it is that something is broken if it's your responsibility to fix it. For example, it's not somebody's fault if their father was an abusive alcoholic, but it's for damn sure their responsibility to figure out how they're going to deal with those traumas and try to make a life out of it. It's not your fault if your partner cheated and ruined your marriage, but it is for damn sure your responsibility to figure out how to take that pain and how to overcome that and build a happy life for yourself. Fault and responsibility do not go together. It sucks, but they don't. When something is somebody's fault, we want them to suffer. We want them punished. We want them to pay. And we want it to be their responsibility to fix it. But that's not how it works, especially when it's your heart. Your heart, your life, your happiness is your responsibility and your responsibility alone. As long as we're pointing the finger and stuck in whose fault something is, we're jammed and trapped into victim mode. When you're in victim mode, you are stuck in suffering. The road to power is in taking responsibility. Your heart, your life, your happiness is your responsibility and your responsibility alone.
If you're hungry and you eat, well, that's good, but it's over and then you're on to the next thing, right? It's not exactly sustaining, it's just necessary. That's called consumatory reward, by the way. This other reward system is incentive reward. And the incentive reward system works on dopamine, this neurochemical dopamine, which is also the neurochemical tracks that opiates and cocaine and amphetamines, the drugs that people really like to abuse, alcohol often for some people, activate. And so you might say if you don't have enough meaning in your life, then you're more prone to addiction. And that's definitely the case, even with rats. If you take a rat and you put him in a cage by himself and he has nothing to do, and then you give him access to cocaine, he'll get addicted to the point where he won't do anything but take cocaine. But if you throw the rat back in with a bunch of other rats and he gets to do rat things, then it's very hard to get him addicted to cocaine. And so the purposeless rat is prone to addiction. Well, it's the same with human beings. Now, here's a corollary to that, which is really cool. So the magnitude of the reward you experience as you're moving towards a goal is proportionate to the importance of the goal. So that means the more important the goal you pick, the more possibility there is for the kind of reward, let's say, it's really a state of being that is life-affirming. And it is directly life-affirming in that, you know, like if you're in a football game and it's an important football game and maybe you break a finger, and you know, normally that's a problem. It hurts and you're gonna stop doing whatever you're doing. But if you're right in the middle of the game, then you'll be so amped up on this reward system that it's analgesic. It stops the pain. It also suppresses anxiety. So if you have a purpose, then it's analgesic. It takes some of the pain out of life. It's very positive in that it motivates and energizes you and focuses you and makes you able to remember and pay attention. And it quells fear. And so those things are all direct. And so then you might think, well, what's the best possible goal? Well, and that's the purpose, I would say, of religious training and philosophical training. It's like, just what the hell are you doing in the world?
Complete the day and leave no tasks that I have to finish in the morning. It's that's it. And so it's not necessarily that I have a specific order, but there are particular things that I do. Number one, totally set up the kids. So that means pack their lunches. It means get the backpacks ready if it's school season and get them by the door. It means if there's any forms that need to be filled out or printed or anything else, that they are printed, they are ready to go. So kids are handled. Second thing, I want the kitchen clean. I don't ever want to wake up in the morning and walk in there and see crap that I have to do. I don't want dishes in the sink. I don't want things on the counter. And so I make sure that the kitchen is clean, that the counters are cleared off, and that there is nothing I need to do in the kitchen because it will distract me in the morning. I will feel guilt. I will feel obligated to get that done. Third thing that I do is I tend to set out the stuff for breakfast. And the reason why I do that is because my kids will wake up at various times. And so if I've got that thing set up, I've just bought myself a couple more minutes of quiet in the morning before the parade of children come running down the stairs, starving and wanting breakfast. The other thing that I do is I go to my computer and I print out the day calendar for the day ahead. And then I take that printout and I take my notebook that has all of my travel and kind of everything that's laid out for the business that I run and my speaking schedule and stuff related to the kids, and I move it all to the kitchen. Now, why am I doing this? I'm doing this so that when I leave my bedroom in the morning and I walk into the kitchen to have 30 minutes of quiet time for myself, to get focused, to plan my priorities, everything's set. It's all been handled. There's no thinking involved. It's amazing. Then, once that's all handled, I turn off all the lights, I lock the front door. When I walk into my bedroom, the very first thing that I do, I set my alarm, and then I plug my phone in my closet.
If you want to make progress in things, I think that the best analytical framework for understanding the future is physics. I'd recommend studying the thinking process around physics. Like, not the equations. I mean, the equations certainly they're helpful, but the way of thinking in physics is it's the best framework for understanding things that are counterintuitive. And always taking the position that you are to some degree wrong, and your goal is to be less wrong over time. I think one of the biggest mistakes people generally make, and I'm guilty of it too, is wishful thinking. Like you want something to be true, even if it isn't true. And so you ignore the things that, you ignore the real truth because of what you want to be true. This is a very difficult trap to avoid. And like I said, it's certainly one that I find myself in having problems with. But if you just take that approach of you're always to some degree wrong, and your goal is to be less wrong, and solicit critical feedback, particularly from friends. Like particularly friends, if somebody loves you, they want the best for you. They don't want to tell you the bad things. So you have to ask them, and say, really, I really do want to know. and then they'll tell you.
You can do more. You can do more than you ever imagined. I was broke at 25 years old. Broke, okay? Every 2 years I get one of these cars. The people at Rolls-Royce like, hey, we want to send you another one of those cars, okay? How you want it? How you want it dressed? What color you want it? Like, it's crazy. It's crazy the life I'm living right now. We did a conference. There was 10,000 people in the room and another 10,000 people online. All of them paid to be there. I remember when I couldn't get 2 people to show up at a party in high school because I was so disliked. You can do more than you think you can, is my message to you today. You will live longer than you think, I promise you, okay? You can do more than you think you can.
I'm always looking for new ways to explain the power of the 5-second rule and the power of 5-second decisions. And I read something that Tim Ferriss said that really resonated with me. And he had this one line buried in a podcast somewhere that just jumped out, and it's stuck. And what he said is, he said something about how there's a gap between the world and the things that trigger you and your response. And your entire life is that gap. When you start to, this is not what he said, I kind of identified this gap, and I, of course, intrinsically was like, well, absolutely, that's the 5-second window between instinct or stimulus and your reaction. And when you start to understand that your whole life plays out in this 5-second gap, and that there's a gap that's 5 seconds long between fear and courage, and there's a gap that's 5 seconds long between self-doubt and confidence, that is your life. And what's super cool about understanding that your whole life is inside this gap is it's so small, everybody, that you have the ability to control it. Life's always gonna throw triggers at you, and there will always be all kinds of cool things that inspire you, your wisdom, and you get to choose what happens in that gap. Do you succumb to an excuse, or do you push yourself forward? When you start to speak up in business, you'll be shocked at how you start to speak up in your relationships. When you start to make hard phone calls, whether it's in a selling situation, you'll be surprised at how you'll start to close the gap and have hard conversations in your personal life. And so that gap is everywhere, and it's the same everywhere. And when you start to go to work in controlling how you live in that gap between stimulus or idea and your response, that's where the magic is.
I talked to my dad, I talked to Warren, I talked to my wife, Melinda. So I have enough people that know me and actually know where my judgment isn't its strongest, where I might get overexcited about something or, forget to think about something. And so they're good at correcting, particularly Melinda, good at correcting whatever those blind spots are. And I think it's good to encourage your friends and advisors to really give them that license. I can go to a party and forget to say hello to various people or something. That's a very minor example of my blind spots.
Not to the hostess.
Melinda would help me do that.
Yeah, she would,
yeah. A small number of people that you can turn to on certain key things is a great asset.
Every gym has a set way of doing things. Don't do it this way, do it that way.
So that was just a normal thing that I thought just people just have their own set way, and you must do it that way. You must stand this way, you must kick this way, you must punch this way. But with John, when I went to John, and I met my coach John Cabinet at Straight Blast Gym, it wasn't like that. He had a more open mind, and he encouraged different movements. And I'd never experienced that before. I'd never heard a coach say that to me before. And that stuck in my head. You know, I thought to myself, you know, this guy is thinking outside the box, you know what I mean? That he has a vision that everything works, and he encourages every movement, because ultimately there is a time and a place for every single move. So I just knew when I met John, and when he spoke, it made complete sense to me, and that was it. I stuck with him, and he stuck with me, and the rest is history.
Because it's fun, you're willing to work your face off.
Right.
And working your face off is actually the gateway. It's not the fun. The fun is the doorway that gets you to put in the work, that gets you the results. Because D-Rock loves filming, like the 24/7 nature of what he does is, you know, is why so many kids want to film and do this, but they don't want to, it's not fun enough for them. You have to love it. So, the cost of entry now is, you see, understand? You have to love, like for me, building brands, whether it's my own brand, brands for other people, other things, the wine, it's so the only thing I give a shit about that I'm willing to put in the 19 that it takes.
Right.
Because the problem is now with the internet, like we were just saying, being the middleman, and everybody can play, there's some kid in Kansas City who's gonna put in the 19.
100%.
Right.
Might even put in 20.
And I don't want any of you little to take my shit. Now what's amazing is though, the biggest thing I didn't know is that's some fun, but there's so much that all those little that are gonna put in the 19 are gonna get theirs too, and that makes me happy.
Yeah.
So I would say fun's a great gateway to, fun is the precursor to ridiculous amount of work, which then gets you there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What fascinates me about human beings, and it fascinates me about myself, is that we have such a high tolerance for suckiness.
Isn't it crazy?
As long as the suckiness is a routine. But the second you get thrown out of your routine, or the second that, whether it's because you lose a job, or somebody moves, or somebody dies, or somebody breaks up with you, or you break, like all of a sudden, that awakens the courage in you to make a change. Because you know, either you have no choice, or now you got a problem to solve.
Yeah.
But fighting that inertia of life is the most difficult thing in the world. I ended up getting a job with a law firm because it was the path of least resistance.
In Boston.
In Boston, I hated it because I went from being in the courtroom to writing briefs all day.
Got it.
And luckily, I got pregnant with our first daughter, who just is starting college, which makes me feel so ancient. I just want to like punch myself in the face that I have a 18-year-old freshman in college.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I got pregnant with her, and when she was born, I had horrific postpartum depression.
Wow.
I mean, the really scary kind, where you can't be alone with the baby. You're on crazy meds that turn you, not the kind you take recreationally.
Yeah.
Like, these are the kind that like turn you into a zombie, and it was a really scary thing. And I when I kind of came out of the 8-week trance of that, I looked up at Chris and said, I've made a decision. And he said, okay, what would that be? And I said, I don't ever want to answer the question, what do you do for a living? With the response, I'm a lawyer. And he said, okay. You realize we've just bought this house and we have a kid and we have bills to pay. And he said, so here's the deal. You've got exactly 4 weeks before your maternity leave is over. You need to make $60,000. I don't care what you do for a living. That's your problem. Go solve it. And the night before I was supposed to, so I networked like a crazy person. Because again, if you're a human being with a problem, you'll solve it.
Yeah.
And so if it matters enough to you. And so I got a job, and this was the first .com boom in Boston. I got a job the night before I was supposed to go back.
You stare at your past and you'll end up staying there. It's okay to look back and admire it, but you carry on. I'm not in the business of staring back at it. You know what I mean? And getting lost back there. People say a loss can make or break a fighter, but trust me, a win can also make or break a fighter, because they get comfortable with a win. People can get comfortable with a win, and slack off then. slack off on the training, slack off on the diet. They've won one. They're winners now. That's not me, you know. You sleep on a win and you'll wake up with a loss. So I just carry on, keep doing what I'm doing. And that's why this turnaround is so good for me. Vegas, straight away. The Fighting Irish head to the fighting capital. It's perfect. Continue on this path, the freight train straight to the top.
There's this governor on our lives, and it is a governor, and it's your identity. It's this internal, it's what you think you're worth. It's what you think you deserve. And the problem for good people, see, we all know someone right now in our life, or we have, who's not ethical, who's not a good person, who's winning, and you're like, I can't believe they're getting it, right? Why can't I? I'm a good person. I treat people well. I'm honest. Here's the reason why. By the way, the unethical person, eventually, karma, you reap what you sow, comes home to roost. But if you're a good person, this is so important people understand this, because it took me a long time. A good person in any endeavor will only take from it what they think they deserve, what they think they're worth. In other words, if there was a pizza here, you're a good person. You don't take all 12 pieces. Right. A good person thinks there should be an equitable distribution.
Yeah, I'm a little bigger, so I might take 7 or 8. You know,
and I would arm wrestle you for it.
You would beat me.
I don't know about that. You're a moose. But long story short, what is that a good person will not take more from the table of life than they think they're worth or they think they deserve. And so you have this governor on your identity. So what happens is it's like a thermostat. Our lives get going. We start doing really well. If we're a 75 degreer and our life gets to 85 and 90 degrees, unconsciously we go, we don't know we're doing it. We start to cool life back down to get it back to where we're comfortable. The reverse is also true. When things start to go really bad and you're broke and you're struggling, you find a way to heat your life back up to what you think you're worth and you deserve. So the way we alter our life is, sure, we got to alter our behavior and our relationships and our circumstances, but the only way it's permanent is that we alter that governor, that thermostat, and we start to believe we're worth 85 degrees of life, 95 degrees of life, 110 degrees of life. And there's ways we can alter that.
How do we alter it?
A couple different ways. One is what you just said, is that you put yourself in circumstances that are demanding of you past what you think your capacity is, and when you succeed at them, you build a new water line. You do. You throw yourself out there past where you're comfortable, and you do an 85 degrees behavior, and you knock it out of the park, and you go, your brain starts to believe it. Repetitiously, when you start doing that, you build a new line. Now you're 85 degrees. That's number one. The second way, though, is association. If you're around people, and whatever that endeavor is, if it's a sport you're in, or if it's a business, or your faith, or your peace, if you begin to associate with people who live in that space at a higher temperature than you, through association you get heated up.
Yeah.
And so if you're an athlete, for example, you're a 70-degree athlete, and you start training all the time with 85 and 90 degrees, your identity through osmosis goes up. If you're a person who's trying to improve their faith in their life or their personal peace about them, you all know this, you've seen it, when you start to hang around people that are a little bit more peaceful than you or meditate a little bit more, through that association, over time, the thermostat changes in that area. And so it's both behaving in a certain way, and then your associations usually change.
I believe that.
My life changed a couple years ago when I discovered something called the Progress Principle. It is a principle that was written about in the Harvard Business Review. It's based on a tremendous amount of research done by a professor over there, and what she determined is that people that feel happy and successful and fulfilled by their lives and work, they all have one thing in common. They feel as though they're making progress on something that matters. So I read this little bit of research and I started applying it to my life. And what I do, as stupid as this sounds, it really works. I don't focus on balancing everything. I focus on just making sure that I make progress on one thing a day. That's right, you heard me. One thing a day that matters to me. Now, if I can make progress on one thing a day that matters to me, then I can let go and let the rest of my day get hijacked by kids, by spouse, by phone calls, by emails, by social media, by all kinds of things that come up and tend to hijack your day when you're a busy person, when you have a family, when you're married, when you got a lot going on. And so by focusing on one thing a day, I feel the sense of control and the sense of progress that science tells us will make you happy and make you feel more confident and actually make you more effective at getting things done. It also frees me up to be more present with my kids.
You know, you're always affected by opinion, but the more opinions there are of you, of me, the less I look at them, because I just can't live my life based upon what other people think about me. So I can't concern myself too much with what other people think. You know, it's just not healthy. I don't think I could continue to do what I do if I was constantly worrying about what somebody thought about it.
One habit that I developed when I was at college that was actually a very bad habit, which was I like to show people that I didn't do any work and that I didn't go to classes and I didn't care. And then at the very last minute, like 2 days before the test, I'd get serious about it. And people thought that was funny. You know, that was my positioning, the guy who did nothing until the last minute. Then when I went into business, that was a really bad habit. And it took me a couple of years to get over that. Nobody praised me because I would do things at the last minute, and I tried to reverse to students I'd actually, I didn't think that highly of, who were always organized and had things done on time. I'm still working on it, but procrastination is not a good habit.
Bill can change clothes in the car. Everything in your life happens for you, not to you. I'm just a huge believer in that. And so my baseball dream ended. I had an injury, probably gave me a premature end to a career that would have ended anyways in hindsight, because I played with enough great players that I kind of know there was a gap in just God-given ability level, not work ethic, but I think to be the greatest, there has to be some proclivity for it and work ethic, right? And so I kind of maxed out my limited abilities. And so when I got released, I ended up moving back home with my parents. I couldn't find a job. I was depressed. I spent about a year at my parents' house, just broke in every way, financially, spiritually, mentally, physically. I remember my dad came home. My dad had just got sober. And my dad said to me, hey, I met this guy at a meeting. I got you a job. You get your ass down there tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. You're getting out of this house and getting a job. And I'm like, okay, I have a college degree. You know, I'm being picky for a year, watching Maury Povich reruns every day on TV and Jerry Springer. I go down there at 6 a.m. I walk in, I said, hey, my name's Eddie Milet. I'm here for the job. They're like, what job? I remember this vividly, right? And I'm like, I don't know. They just told me you'd know. And they go, well, we have no idea who you are and we don't know what the job is. They said, do you know who's hiring you? I said, I don't remember. And they go, well, then you need to come back. And I go to the door and I go, wait a minute, his name's Tim. They're like, there's a lot of Tims. And I go, well, I know he must be an alcoholic because he was at a meeting with my dad last night. They go, oh, drunk Tim, we know Tim, right? And where I was a place called McKinley Home for Boys. It was a group home, a campus of group homes. All my boys were wards of the court. They were removed from their family either because their parents were incarcerated, killed, or were molesting them. And I ended up in Cottage 8. Cottage 8, I had 12 boys. They were 7 to 10 years old. And I walked through that door that morning, not even knowing what the job was, and it transformed my life. I mean, in an instant, brother. I just saw these eyes, these little boys, and they just wanted someone to love them and believe in them and care about them. And I'd have this big belief that people that go through any dysfunction in their family or abuse as a kid, I think our eyes are different. We just have these different eyes, man. And so I could connect with these guys. Mine wasn't as severe as theirs, but I knew what it was like to have that kind of anxiety and that kind of stress and that kind of pressure put on you as a little boy. And I became like their father. I was there with them on Christmas and Halloween and their birthdays, and I lived with them. And it changed my world because in that instant, I went from being this athlete who was ego, recognition, significance, gonna get rich, it's all about me. Always when you're a good athlete, you knew this growing up, it was always accolades. All of a sudden in that instant, it became about serving people, making a difference. And I've been like, oh, this is what makes me happy. Oh, I was actually born to serve and help people. Crazy. No one, that never happened playing baseball. And while I worked there, 2 years into it, the financial business that I'm in came along. And I started in it part-time, and I was the rare young businessman who approached the business world from a place of service and giving and not making money. And ironically, the more I served people, the more I made a difference, the more I contributed, the more I was rewarded financially. I didn't do it for that reason, but that's what happened. So that's how I got into the business, was actually, and again, everything, my dad wasn't an alcoholic. He's not at that meeting. I don't get that job. And if it wasn't an alcoholic, I wouldn't have connected with those boys. So all of that in hindsight happened for me, right? And had I met the financial business before that, I'd have flown out of it. I'd have been about ego, making money, and when that didn't happen, I'd have left. Yeah. And so it all happened in the right sequence.
Many of you are sitting around waiting to feel ready. You can still move forward when you're not ready. Too many of you are waiting to feel like you deserve to make 6 figures. It's about the action. Your mind, your history, your past, you will always have a million excuses not to do it, not to feel like it, not to believe in yourself. They're all The only thing that matters in your life and your business is the actions that you're taking. And the more consistently that you take action, the faster you will start to believe in yourself, because you will see proof that you are not the kind of person that sits around and feels unworthy, that you're not a victim that sits by and gets sucked into other people's stuff, that you're not that kind of person. So it won't make sense to believe it anymore, but it starts with action. I believe in all of you, and I believe in your ability to get it done. But it's going to be up to you. Who is the problem? Yeah. Who's the solution? That's right. Don't wait to feel like it. That is the biggest mistake you could possibly make. Remember that you're smart. Remember that you know what to do. And just get it done.
My son's 14. He's fabulous. And we're having this conversation about when he plays in sports or when he does something about, do you go full out or do you not? And I see sometimes in him that when he's out on the field or doing something, he doesn't play full out and he'll have an excuse. Like my leg hurts or my arm hurts or something happened, the coach was unfair, whatever, the referee was unfair. And what happens with people is we tend to go out into the world and we look for those sort of excuses about why things aren't the way we want them. And when you do that, you lose all your power in life. When you start focusing on the external, on the excuses, you lose your power. Here's the way people really think. I will tell you, I can go out onto stage and bomb. You go out there and you just bomb, right? And people will respect you for going out there and trying your hardest. It's not how you actually perform that earns you the respect of your peers. It's the fact that you went out and actually did it. That's the difference. So if you're out there right now and you're a new salesperson or you're struggling as a salesperson, there's no embarrassment in the struggle. There's just not. The embarrassment is in quitting. The embarrassment is in not trying your hardest.